Hi, everyone. I'm Diana Christie. I'm the director here at MSD, and I just wanted to thank you all for coming tonight. And MSD is very happy to host this event as a partner in the discussions around the water quality of our shared resource, the Little Miami River. As those of you in this room know, the Little Miami River has come a long way since it was designated as a state scenic river in 1971, but it still needs our attention. The dangers of flowing through urbanized areas have not lessened in the past 50 years, and the main stem of the Little Miami River is only as healthy as its tributaries. So what you'll hear tonight is that MSD and its partners are continuing to work together to address the issues facing the watershed today, honoring the legacy of those who worked so hard to secure its protection. So I want to acknowledge those partners that you're going to hear from today and thank them for being here and all of you. So we have Midwest Biodiversity, who's responsible for the data collection and producing a water quality report. Limnotech, our water quality consultant, and we have Carrie Turner here today, perhaps others. We have the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Aaron Rourke, Little Miami Conservancy, Jason Brown-Knight, Hamilton County Public Health, Eric Bartle is here. And Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District. Molly Conley, I believe she's online, hosting as a virtual host. And our Forum Planning Committee, not going to name everyone, but thanks to all the MSD staff, our communications, IT, environmental, and Rick Record, who is a partner with us on the Planning Committee. Also want to take this opportunity to congratulate the Cincinnati chapter of the Isaac Walton League, who was recently awarded a grant to restart the Saturday Stream Snapshot program. That's a tough one. So SSS program in the lower Little Miami watershed in 2024. So the SSS program has two main components, the stream sampling itself, plus educating the public about water quality issues in their area and steps the residents can take to help reduce pollution to the lower Little Miami River. MSD and many of the organizations here today represented in this room supported this application, and so I'm sure we're all excited to see that work resume in 2024. So just what we're going to talk about, what the agenda is today quickly. First, the results of the water quality sampling conducted in the lower Little Miami River during the summer of 2022. And then the work of three of our partners, so Little Miami Conservancy, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and Hamilton County Public Health. And then you'll hear about MSD's work in the watershed, including our active and planned capital improvements. Lastly, you'll have an opportunity to share your thoughts about the water quality of the lower Mill. I keep wanting to say the lower Mill Creek. It's just so, it's just entrenched in my head. So we are talking about the Little Miami River, but we're going to talk about that during breakout discussion groups, which will be expertly facilitated by our moderators, both in person and online, I understand. So those of you online will not be left out. And the key to this discussion and where we are today, and I think where we want to go, is collaboration. And collaboration and working together is vital to protecting and improving water quality. I mean, that's for the Little Miami and for the region overall. So having you here today in November on a night where we didn't expect you all may want to be outside. But we thank you for coming in and being a part of this and hope that this is, a continued success and partnership. With that, I will turn it back over to Laura. Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't change the slides. Apparently I have to change them up here. So that was my bad. So tonight, I'm just going to briefly introduce myself for those that don't know me. My name is Laura Boyd, and I am the environmental manager here at MSD. Tonight, I'm going to give a brief overview of the Little Miami watershed, and then also kind of a crash course in water quality standards in Ohio, just so that we all are starting from the same place and speaking the same language when we go into the discussions. And also, we'll, like Diana mentioned, hear from our partners, and then the last 45 minutes or so, we will go into a World Cafe type conversation. So the Little Miami River watershed, how many of you knew that it started up near Xenia, Ohio? Okay, well, I'll admit I was one of them. I did not know that until a few weeks ago. We live here in Hamilton County, and we're all familiar with the Little Miami River, but don't really think about the bigger watershed as a whole. So I just wanted to put this into perspective. Tonight we'll be focusing on the lower Little Miami watershed, which is highlighted in the blue, the middle section there. It's kind of a purple blue. And then I'd like to point out MSD's service area, which is the green shaded area. And the study, the report that we're going to be presenting the results tonight is the orange hatched area. So that's kind of the focus for tonight. But again, putting it into perspective of the whole watershed. So a little bit about Ohio water quality standards, just for those that aren't that familiar with them. There are three basic components, and those include the beneficial use designations, the water quality criteria, and anti-degradation. So I stole this slide from Ohio EPA's presentation a few weeks ago, but I think the bar stool kind of helps visualize what those water quality standards look like. So the first component is the beneficial use designations, and this is these are specific to each water body. So you can see the top section here is for the Little Miami River, and for aquatic life habitat, the majority of it is designated as the exceptional warm water habitat, which is the highest you can be designated. And then the recreation is designated as primary contact. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what that actually means. So aquatic life use, Ohio has a tiered kind of approach to that. So you can see exceptional warm water habitat is the highest designation, and then the limited resource water is the lowest. And this is based on the bio criteria. So here's a visual of what each of those habitats kind of look like. These are all Little Miami pictures except for the modified warm water habitat picture, because that there aren't any designated modified warm water habitats in the lower Little Miami. I don't know about the whole one, probably not. But anyways, so you can see what each of those look like. The picture in the lower right corner is Duck Creek. So if anyone's familiar with that, that is what a limited resource water looks like. So going back over to recreational uses, we typically only think of two designations, but there are three categories rather for recreation use. So the first one being bathing waters, and in Ohio, that's Lake Erie and the Ohio River. And then you have primary contact recreation and secondary contact recreation. So secondary contact just means you can't submerge your whole body. The stream doesn't allow you to fully submerge into it. So that's what secondary contact recreation means. So the second component of the water quality standards in Ohio is the water quality criteria. And these are specifically designed to protect those beneficial use designations that we just talked about. So again, there's three types of water quality criteria. The narrative criteria, which is your free from. So they're general statements like free from odors, free from floatables, free from suspended solids. Then you have your biological criteria, or commonly referred to as bio criteria, which is kind of what the focus of the bioassessment is. And you also have numeric criteria, which is the chemical and physical. So the NBI report, which we will hear more about later, looks at the bio criteria, and it evaluates it based on these indexes. So the index of biotic integrity and the modified index of well-being is specific to the fish biodiversity of the water body. And these were all pictures that NBI took during their study in 2022. So I tried to be diverse in my picture selection, but we have a spotted bass, a golden red horse, a rainbow darter, a long-eared sunfish, and then a high-fin carp sucker. So all of these fish are unique, and it just goes to show the diversity in the Little Miami. So the other things that NBI looks at during their bioassessment is the Invertebrate Community Index, or ICI, which is essentially bugs. Fish eat bugs. So if the bugs are good, then the fish are usually good too. And chemical and physical assessments are performed alongside the fish surveys. And those usually include grab sampling, continuous monitoring with the sondes. They measure things like dissolved oxygen, temperature, and then they do a qualitative habitat evaluation, which is referred to as a QHEI. And so the third component of water quality standards, and probably the most important when it comes to the Little Miami River, which is already designated as a exceptional warm water habitat, is anti-degradation. So essentially, keeping that use designation is important. So anti-degradation is the framework for maintaining and protecting those beneficial uses. And it may only be lowered for important economic or social development and must also not be without loss of uses. So anti-degradation is essentially a procedure for determining whether discharge is necessary before authorizing it. And Ohio EPA is here, so if I'm wrong in anything, they can correct me. So I'm going to just highlight the objectives of the bioassessment. The first objective is to evaluate and recommend the appropriate aquatic life use tier. So going back to this picture, which shows those aquatic life uses, making sure we have the correct one assigned to each water body. The second objective of the bioassessment is to determine whether that is an attainment or not, and then identify potential causes or sources of impairments or potential threats. So then we look at attainment status, and when you look at the report, you'll notice the different scales on the side. Aquatic life use is identified or portrayed as either full, partial, or non-attainment. And then recreation is either attaining or impaired. And recreation is attainment status is based on its E. coli, and it's used as an indicator for other pathogens. So the third objective of the bioassessment is to determine trends over time. And we have been collecting this data for a long time. And when I say we, I mean Ohio EPA, MBI, MSD. So collectively, we've been collecting this data and evaluating our water bodies. So I think MSD started their sampling and monitoring as part of the CSO permit requirement. So that began in 2011, and we've continued that. So this is actually the third series of bioassessments that we have performed through MSD. So with that, hopefully, I know that was really fast, but I'm trying to make up for lost time. And I just wanted to give everyone an overview of the water quality standards. And Carrie is going to present the results of the 2022 MBI bioassessment.
All right, hopefully you guys can hear me. I will just first acknowledge that Chris Yoder and Trent Doherty are here from MBI. They were the architects of the study that I'm going to be talking about, but I'm talking about it because I think I talk faster than both of these guys, and we have a lot to get through tonight. So, so let's just quickly cover. Thanks for the foundation that you laid out, Laura, on the water quality standards and the use attainment criteria. So Laura just talked about the objective. The first objective is to evaluate and recommend the appropriate aquatic life use tier. This kind of sets the bar for which the data are evaluated to assess attainment. And this was a big effort in the first survey, first round of sampling under the CSO permit that was done in 2011 through 2014. But there are some modest recommendations. We, being MBI and MSD, look at those aquatic life use designations and make recommendations about any changes. And, you know, for the main stem, as Laura said, it's exceptional warm water habitat. It's in pretty good shape, as you'll see in just a few minutes. So there's no changes recommended there. East Fork Duck Creek. I don't know if that photo of the limited resource water was from the East Fork, but there's 2 sites that monitor there. The recommendation is to actually upgrade those from limited resource water to warm water habitat. And then the other 3 major tributaries that that are the focus of our study, Sycamore Creek, Polk Run, and Clough Creek. Again, no recommendations, kind of keeping with the recommendations that were established and reviewed in the first round of this study. So in the second objective, this is where I think things get really interesting, hopefully for you guys, is to look at how is the river doing with respect to aquatic life, and what can we learn about the causes and sources of impairment. So MBI, when they go out, they're sampling fish or sampling bugs, or looking at the habitat, and then they're also looking at a lot of chemistry to help identify what the causes are. And then they trace those causes when they can back to specific sources, and we'll show examples of both of those in just a few slides. So this helps give us information to prioritize management actions and understand where the issues are. So I'll start with aquatic life attainment. So this is a summary by site. So there are 14 sites in the main stem of the Little Miami. And as Laura said, there's kind of 3 attainment levels: full, partial, or non. And the bulk of the main stem sites, I think it's 11 out of 14 are fully attaining, and 2 out of 14 are partially attaining. So there's really only 1 site, and it's a warm water site, that is not attaining. And then if you just kind of scroll down and look at the tributaries, I mean, generally, overall, the picture looks pretty good, except for Duck Creek and Sycamore Creek, where we have 40% or so not attaining, but the rest of the creeks, and again, there's not a lot of sampling there because they're further up in the watershed. So this summary, if you guys have read the report, you'll note, if you've read it in detail, you'll note that there are some sampling sites that are left out. So primary headwater sampling locations, so these are way up in the headwaters. Those don't have use attainment criteria, so they're left out of this tally. But bottom line, 88% of the river miles in the main stem are in full attainment. So that's a great story. When we start looking at these are excerpts from the report, and the report is available on MSD's website. So I encourage you guys to jump on their website and download it and take a look at it. But this just basically breaks out the causes of impairment. Those are the pie graphs on the left-hand side, split out by individual waterway. So Duck Creek at the top, which is the most impaired. It's about a third due to macro habitat issues, another third due to urban development or urban-related runoff, and then the rest of the pie is dissolved oxygen, toxics, and land use changes. Nutrients, not toxics. Nutrients, land use, and dissolved oxygen. So that's a nice kind of summary of from the chemical data that MBI collects about what the causes are. And you can see those for the Little Miami and the other tributaries as well. And then on the right-hand side, this is another excerpt from the report that just provides the attainment in map format. And when we get to the story map, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But basically, this shows how the river is attaining. And if you focus on the main stem, where all the blue dots are, that's full attainment of the exceptional warm water, or exceptional exceptional warm water habitat, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. And then you can see kind of the reddish and orangish dots over in Duck Creek on kind of the southwestern part of the watershed. And those were that was one of the tributaries that in the previous slide had a high percentage that were not attaining. And this just kind of shows that in picture form. So this kind of information, high level information, is available in the report. And I encourage everyone to take a look at it if you haven't already. And then in terms of recreational use by site, so this is a little bit different story. As Laura said, the standard is looking at E. coli, which is an indicator for other things that can make people sick when they go swimming or kayak in the river. And what we see is that in contrast to aquatic life use, here there's a relatively high percentage of impairment in all the watersheds except for, well, Polk Run. And the level of attainment is much less than for aquatic life. Again, this excludes those primary headwater sites. And what we've tallied up here is both the primary contact recreation and secondary contact recreation summaries. The criteria are different. That's in the lower right-hand corner, but we make those comparisons based on how the site is designated. So the percentages reflect the relevant criteria. Okay, and then here's a map. Also, this is, I think, excerpted from the story map, but something similar is in the report that just shows how the spatial distribution of compliance and impairment, or attainment and impairment. So you can see the main stem. The main stem has a lot of these dark red dots because they're not, there's a lot of them that don't meet the criteria, either one or both of the E. coli criteria. And then, when you get up into some of these tribs where it's green, those areas are attaining. So, just look for how much is red and how much is green, and you see that recreational use is a bigger challenge in this waterway perhaps than aquatic life. Okay, then the last objective is to determine the trends over time. So we want to, as Laura and Diana said, there's been a lot of monitoring over many decades of the Little Miami. So putting all that data together, and standard protocols have been established for a long time, so that allows us to really look at trends over time. So we're going to show a couple excerpts again from the report that kind of capture that. So let me just explain. So we're looking at the two fish results here, and I'm going to just break this down. It's the same format for all of the charts that I'm going to show, but the zero line represents the attainment. And so if you're above the line, that means that you've got a lot of miles and relatively high degree of attainment. And if you're below the line, that's the area where you're not, that reflects the portions of the river that are not attaining the designated use based on the IBI, Index of Biotic Integrity. So we start with 1983 on the left-hand side, and 2022 is the most recent. You can see in the early days of monitoring, not much good to report, lots of impairment. And as we've sampled over time, things have gotten better. There's a little bit of variability, but that's partly, I think, because my interpretation that the river is in pretty good shape, and it's hard to improve sometimes on good results. And then same thing with the other index that we use with the fish, the modified index of well-being. This one also shows pretty good fish community performance of attainment over time and improvement. Then just to kind of capture everything. So this graph on the left here is the macroinvertebrate index of community, invertebrate community index. Sorry, I get those eyes mixed up all the time. Same kind of thing. Zero line represents attainment. When we're above the line, we have good attainment. The size of the bar reflects the number of miles as well as how far above that minimum level of attainment we are. And then when we're below the line, this reflects the opposite, how much of the river and how severely is it impaired. And again, we see kind of a improvement over the last 40 years, very, very positive. And then the last one over here just kind of summarizes full versus non-attainment miles. So this just kind of packages all of that individual index data together and plots it, creates a similar plot. So you can see that in the early days, back in the 80s, we had a lot of non-attainment, and now 4 decades later, we have a lot of attainment. So full attainment. So another way to show how well the Little Miami is doing. Okay. They give you enough time to do the story. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Carrie. So similar to last year, we developed a Little Miami River story map, and this will be available on our website. It's not published yet because we didn't get it done in time to get Diana or Reese's approval. So I'm just going to highlight some of the features on that story map so you guys can check it out at a later time. And let's see if this works. Okay, so similar to the Mill Creek story map, we have a history section on the Little Miami, which I'm not going to read, but I will scroll through it. This map is a familiar map. It shows the watershed that I presented earlier. There's also a link to directly to the MBI report. It also breaks down all of the criteria index and the criteria, so that's there as well. I'm just going to jump ahead to my favorite part, which was the map that kind of Carrie just presented. What's cool about this is, again, it shows the recreation use status. And I just wanted to point out, we're not meeting the recreation standard outside the MSD service area. So, I mean, even in the upper parts of the lower Little Miami Reach, we're not in attainment. And what I've done with the help of some IT is we've overlaid the locations of MSD's sewer overflows. So you can see the location of all of our overflows in relation to the not Mill Creek, I'm doing it too, but the Little Miami. And we also added in all of the home septic sewage systems, so for Hamilton County. Hopefully I'll be able to work with the Claremont County folks to get some data on their end, and maybe even Warren County, so we can kind of pull all that in and see. And I know Eric Bartle is going to maybe talk about this in a little bit as well, but you can see just the severity and the magnitude of how many home septic systems are in the watershed. And I don't know, it's a fun feature. So that's all I'm going to go into detail on that. And you guys can check it out on our website. But for the sake of time, I am going to, I think, hand it over to Jason Brown Knight with the Little Miami Conservancy. So as he makes his way up here, I think this slide just goes to show that we have been making progress. And when you compare the attainment status of the Little Miami River in the 1980s, when all of this monitoring began, to where we are today, it's a really good story. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Brown Knight with the Little Miami Conservancy.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. Gosh, this is a lot of great information. So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit about what the organization that I represent has been doing. We were founded in 1967, so since then we've been working to restore and protect the Little Miami State and National Scenic River since that time. And so, usually this presentation has like 20 or 30 slides or so, so it's way pared down for the sake of time here. But really, the main thing, a little history. The reason why our organization was founded, was the river was highly impaired in the late 1960s, and then the state of Ohio had a new program that was being created, and that was the State Scenic Rivers Program. And so the State Scenic Rivers Act was signed in 1967. And so that's really why the Little Miami Conservancy, formerly known as Little Miami Incorporated, was founded. So our founders, that was their very thing, was to get the Little Miami designated as the first state scenic river. And the upper portion, the upper 60 miles or so of the river, was designated in April of 1969. And then the lower part of the river was designated in 1971. And so still today, the Little Miami is the largest state scenic river of the 15 scenic rivers in the state of Ohio. And then the nation followed suit with the state of Ohio. And later in that year, they created the National Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. And so that was also a big part of why the organization was created, was again to get the Little Miami designated as a national wild and scenic river. And so that took a little bit longer of a process. But similarly, the upper part of the Little Miami was designated in 1973, and then the lower part was designated as a national wild and scenic river in 1980. And so what that means is two of our biggest partners, is Aaron with ODNR in the scenic rivers, and then a gentleman by the name of Hector Santiago, which is with the National Park Service. And so they're two of our biggest allies that we have to help us restore and protect the Little Miami all along its entire length. And so, as you can see, the Little Miami is only one of 3 national wild and scenic rivers, and only one of 15 state scenic rivers. So it is extremely unique. And those are based on designations that are unique features of the river. And similarly, to the aquatic standards and anti-degradation, we still have to meet these outstandingly remarkable values, is what they call them as in the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. And so that's still like fish, scenery, recreation, geology, trying to be not as, we know we have some urban, it is a tricky watershed because we've got Dayton, we've got Cincinnati, and so some other watersheds are kind of, I'm originally from Adams County, way out in the boondocks. So urban development is really not an issue with streams out there. But it's certainly a challenge that we have to balance today. And so we work very closely with those partners. Laura did a great job. I usually like to show this map, but they did a great job of showing this. But it's just represented, and this is from Ohio EPA, of just how long, not just the Little Miami, but all the rivers have really come far, since the early 80s. And as we've kind of already went over, just the level of impairment in the early 80s. I mean, less than 5% of the Little Miami was meeting its aquatic life designation. And today we're around, 90% or more. And it's really that lower part where you get the backwater of the Ohio River that's kind of getting in our way of getting that. I'm not sure we'll ever be able to overtake that, but it is a really great success story. And since 1967, we do tons of things. We have data sondes out. We do fish eDNA. So we do a lot of research, tons of education programs. We do thousands of kids. We offer about 70 free education programs a year. Provide a lot of technical expertise to different communities, planning commissions. But really, one of the main things that we're most proud of is our land protection and active restoration of those lands. And so what you're seeing on this map is, if you can see the green stars, and it's pretty much mainly along the main stem, those are properties that we own through fee simple. And some of those are open to the public with hiking trails. And then the pink stars that we have, those are conservation easements. So those are private landowners that have that land, but then we have use restrictions on that land that essentially just protects those as natural areas. Now, we're a river conservation organization, not a true land trust. So just protecting land isn't the only thing that we do. So what you'll notice here is you can see that over 95% of our properties are along the main stem of the Little Miami. We have a couple outliers, but typically if we get calls from, land protection opportunities in the headwaters regions or tributaries, that's when we'll bring in our partners, because that's a little better fit for them. Of that, 121 nature reserves, 2,000 acres, I'm the only full-time staff person. So that keeps us pretty busy. So that's where we really rely on the partnerships. And the great thing is today, and again, if we go back to that success story, by the 1980s, again, about a less than 5% of the riverbanks along the main stem were under any kind of protection. Fast forward today, and we're well over 50% of the riverbanks of the main stem of the Little Miami is under some kind of protection. That's either property that we own, ODNR Scenic Rivers and Division Natural Areas and Preserves, maybe the largest protector of there. And then, of course, we have park districts. But then we also have planning commissions and planning districts that have really been doing a good job of, having PUDs, planning unit developments, and setting riparian setbacks and protecting areas. So in the future, it'll be protected as well. So something that we're, very proud of. And we're actually working right now with a landowner to protect a 2-mile stretch of the main stem of the Little Miami just north of Xenia. We're trying to get that done by the end of the year, and that'll actually be the largest contiguous riparian zone protection project that we'll have throughout the river. We have several 1 mile sections that we protect and we've restored through tree plantings. We do prairie plantings as well, but this will be one of our largest projects. And that landowner is just going to donate that conservation easement. So that would be a huge win for the river, and one thing that we're really hoping that happens. If it doesn't happen this year, we'll go into next year. So it'll get done. But so we're continuing to actively protect land along the river, and then we do tons of restoration projects. So there's my quick little spill there.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, so just also a reminder to please speak into the mic because the folks in the virtual world can't hear you unless you're talking into the mic. But I think we're okay, right? Okay, so up next is Aaron Rourke with ODNR.
A lot of interesting things going on, a lot of money being given out. This is a great administration to be working for. We have a governor who's from Greene County, loves Little Miami, started a new state park, the first one in quite a few years, and has been very supportive of our efforts within Division of Natural Areas and Preserves. Jason mentioned that ours is the first river designated in the oldest system in the nation, so it's cited as an example in the heavily developed East of what you can do with dedicated, concerted, consistent effort over 5 decades. We keep having anniversaries of designation. People are starting to ask, how many times are we going to celebrate this? Well, there's another one coming up in the next year or so, and that is, well, no, we just had the 50th anniversary. So of the national designation of the second half of the river. So the next one won't be till 2030. 4 criteria for designation within the state system. A wide riparian buffer, because if there's only one thing you can do as a river conservationist, one hand's tied behind your back, it is assemble riparian corridor. Number 2, limited human intrusion. That's things like bridges, parallel roads. So the Little Miami does not have an interstate highway running along it. That would have excluded it from designation because of unlimited human intrusion. The Great Miami will never be designated a state scenic river, where 75 parallels it for that reason, among others, but that's actually in fairly good shape in many places. Thirdly, the river has to be free flowing. That is in its natural channel, not too many dams, not too many levees that exclude the river from its floodplain. It should inhabit its floodplain when the flows are high enough, shouldn't be disconnected from it. And finally, the watershed in the designated section should be 10% or less impervious surface, because in general, broadly speaking, since pre-settlement times, as the number of species and the abundance of the individuals within the species that are willing to live in a river has slowly declined, as the river has, as its watershed has become more impervious, roofs, asphalt, parking lots, roads, sidewalks, the number of species that are willing to live there drops quickly. There's an inflection point at, roughly speaking, 10%, and the abundance of the species that are still willing to live in that watershed declines precipitously too. So 10% impervious surface is a good cut point. Now, we're not hard and fast on each of those 4. So if a river has great riparian corridor, but a little more human intrusion than we're comfortable with, it could still meet scenic designation. Or we might say, why don't you go for recreational designation and work your way upward? Because we have recreational, scenic, and then wild designations. Other things that count for extra points are rare and endangered species, unique habitats, interesting geological features. Like, for instance, on the Little Miami, do you realize we have 4 gorges? A river's supposed to have 1. But because of stream capture during the glacial period, we have a cobbled together system of 2 pre-glacial stream master streams. So that's kind of an interesting feature. By the way, I'll name them for you. Clifton Gorge, that's the natural one. A river is supposed to fall asymptotically out of its headwaters and gradually reach a fall rate of nearly 0 at its confluence with the next master stream. So if you paddle the lower Little Miami, you'll find it's lake-like. But up in the middle main stem, say the Fort Ancient area, it's falling about 4 feet per mile. So let me think. Quick interesting point. If you bike up the bike trail and you find yourself under the Jeremiah Morrow Bridge, 230 feet up, when you get to Xenia, you will have attained that height. But it's generally considered imperceptible. It's a little easier on the way home, the bikers tell me. Okay, cultural significance had an outsized influence in the designation of the Little Miami. Give you an example. Jason referred to the outstandingly remarkable values that Hector, Santiago, and the National Park Service use as their criteria for designating national wild and scenic rivers. Little Miami it wins on 6 characteristics. The Darby's 1. So we've got all kinds of reasons to be proud of this river. And here's a forward-leaning way to look at that. Hector has a duty to preserve and enhance the ORVs. That means whenever we have, say, a Native American earthwork that is in private hands but is up for sale, Hector and we both have an interest and a duty to consider acquiring that. So I'm looking to you because you know more about what goes on in this watershed than one single person can. And I'm always looking for tips about what successes we might have available. Let's see, I have 3 main duties. I have to review all public projects within 1,000 feet of the river, as long as they're not in a city. Now, Hector's jurisdiction extends into cities. So Hector says, hey, Aaron, I've got this new boat ramp coming into Milford. That's a real world. What do you want this to look like? So actually, we do have influence even in cities. I maintain a stream quality monitoring program with 30 reference sites. That's on the Little Miami and the Stillwater and its principal tributary, Greenville Creek. I have 1 employee who helps me with that. And finally, I maintain advisory councils on both watersheds of 10 citizens who help me with local knowledge. That summarizes it, local knowledge. And by the way, being on that council is a fairly privileged position because their resolutions and recommendations go directly to the director of ODNR and have to be answered. So they count for a lot. Let's see. Unique among the state scenic rivers, the 15 of them, the Little Miami is mostly threatened by urban development. For the rest, it's ag pollution. For us, it's the Beaver Creek Xenia corridor. They've got 20 years worth of development mapped out. Lots of properties are already zoned for these developments. The developments have already been sketched out, and it's just a matter of the conveyor belt spitting them out 1 or 2 a year. So we've got a lot of stormwater problems coming, and we have to make sure we mitigate those as much as possible. The other heavily developed area, of course, is the Duck Creek corridor down here. And in both of those areas, we're seeing maybe 30 to 40% impervious surface in those subwatersheds. So that's a problem. Log jams and stream bank collapse take up a lot of my time these days because of our torrential storms and the ash death. The ash trees die, they fall in, the storms cause them to aggregate on bridge abutments and at bends and rivers. They cause public safety problems. So we have to figure out how to mitigate the public safety problems and still maintain scenic river values, because we like the river to be able to do what it's naturally trying to do to the degree that it is still natural. Tangentially, I'll mention I just read the Sunwatch Indian Village Archaeological Report. They found over 15,000 bits of freshwater mussels, and they were able to identify most of them to species. And the ones that they could identify of that list, from most abundant in the archaeological record to least abundant, the top 6 freshwater mussel species are either extirpated from the Great Miami or they're rare. That's how derivative our watersheds have become. Okay, mussel status in the Little Miami, most recently described as in catastrophic collapse. I know a lot of you are interested in the Great Miami too, and I can say we just did a survey on the Stillwater. Results haven't been compiled yet, but the Scenic River Program Manager said it's not as bad as the Little Miami. Stillwater's doing better. Let's see, we've also reintroduced darters in the Stillwater, the blue breast and the variegated. They were historically known there, but haven't been seen since the late 1800s. Well, since the Clean Water Act was passed in 72, and that tide has lifted so many boats, that is, so many rivers have improved in quality around the state, we found that we could harvest them by the hundreds in the Darby's, the Scioto watershed, and, well, Darby's are part of that, and the Muskingum River watershed. So we've reintroduced them, and we're finding that they're reproducing because we're finding young with no tags. I'm going to hurry. Oh yeah, I got to leave you with this. You've heard of the H2 Ohio program that's establishing wetlands for mitigation of nutrients. Well, this year, starting 6 months ago. So we're already 6 months into the 2-year cycle, and that creates a sense of urgency for me, and I hope for you too. We have a bunch of money to spend on rivers now. The H2 Ohio Rivers Initiative has started, has 3 main pots of money, $880,000 for stream cleanups. Now, 1/3 of that's going to go to liveries for purchase of onion bags, gloves, whatever equipment they need to give their customers to bring trash in off the river at the end of their trips. It includes dumpster rental. 2/3 is going for dump site cleanup. So if you know of any dump sites, let me know. We have to spend this money quick. So they're looking for applications quick. All I need is a Google dot on a map, a Google pin. Okay, number 2, dam removal. We have $5 million for dam removal. And since, as I mentioned, some of you are interested in the Great Miami, the Covington Dam on the Stillwater is probably top of the list. It's only going to be $500,000 though. We've got $5 million. We're looking for dams to remove. Now you're interested in the Little Miami, and you probably know the Corwin Dam and the Clifton Mill Dam are the only 2 remaining on the whole 107 miles. So there's a move afoot to get the Corwin Dam out. We'll see. It's in the middle main stem, so it'll make a lot of difference. And finally, land acquisition, $17 million, but we have to spend it in the next 1.5 years. Only $7.5 million is even kind of theoretically budgeted, but land deals keep falling through. So we have $9.5 million completely unspoken for, and we have to spend it in 1.5 years. And what we want here is we want good riparian corridor. And if we want big chunks that smaller watershed groups choke on. It's too big for them. We want the big pieces with good, healthy bottomland forest. Extra points if it's got, say, highly erodible but well-wooded slopes, or tributary streams coming through it, or slough wetlands, oxbows, things like that. We have a lot of chance to make progress in the next 1.5 years. And it's a great administration to be working under. Maybe same things you can do. You asked me to end with some things that people can do. I'll give you 3. Support continuation of the H2 Ohio Rivers Initiative past this 2-year cycle. If we can keep this going, that'd be great. The Scenic River Law is in the legislature. They're going to change it so that I can now work within the whole watershed, not just within 1,000 feet of the river. If you want to write your legislator and support that, yay. And we've got a unique land acquisition opportunity in Warren County. It'll never come again. If you know of anybody who wants to see scenic river values preserved in Warren County, an entity or an individual, let me know, because we have to create a collaborative funding. Public funding is not going to get us across the goal line. Ask me questions. I'll be here all day.
All night. All right. Thank you, Aaron. Yes, he'll be here, and we'll have lots of time. Well, maybe not lots of time, but a time at the end for questions and discussion. So moving on, I will introduce Eric Bartle with the Hamilton County Public Health. And sorry, you're writing. No.
Okay, perfect. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, good. All right, my name's Eric Bartle with Hamilton County Public Health. I'm a registered environmental health specialist, and my primary job responsibilities are dealing with illicit discharges into all the watersheds of the Little Miami, but also all over the county. I work on a great stormwater team. And the biggest illicit discharge we deal with our office is home sewage treatment systems. So in the Little Miami watershed, we've got over 4,000 home sewage treatment systems, and a good chunk of those are discharging home sewage treatment systems. So if a septic system or home sewage treatment system has a motor in it and it's not functioning properly, it's discharging untreated wastewater out into a local waterway. And that could be as simple as a motor flips or a breaker flips in the house, or it loses electricity. There's a lot of things that can cause that to happen. But about 20% of the septic systems are failing on our routine inspections, which is why we have health inspectors whose sole job is to check these septic systems in the county on a routine basis to make sure that they're operating properly so that we don't have untreated wastewater going into our local waterways. This is a map that shows roughly where they all are in the Little Miami watershed. We've got over 20,000 in the entire county, but that's just in Hamilton County. I believe Claremont probably has about the same number as us in terms of septic systems, and Warren probably has just as many up there. And it's a huge source of pollution, and it's a huge issue that we deal with in our office. But that's just one of the illicit discharges we deal with. The other is broken sewer lines. So, MSD deals with their sewers when they have clogs and breaks and problems like that. But when a private sewer or a homeowner sewer line breaks in a creek or a stream or in a yard, we're the ones that go out and have to do the enforcement to make sure that homeowner actually repairs it so that raw sewage stops flowing into a neighboring yard and stops going into a local ditch or stream or waterway. And so the sewer repairs can get really pricey if anyone knows anything about those. Illicit discharge. Another illicit discharge we deal with regularly are cross connections. We keep finding these all over the county. They're in every jurisdiction, and they're a huge problem we're dealing with, where houses or buildings were illegally or incorrectly tied into the storm sewers instead of tied into the sanitary sewers. So for 40, 50, 60 years, untreated, wastewater has been going right to the creek or right to the stream. We've got about 15 of them in the Little Miami watershed just in Hamilton County. And I think if Claremont County and Warren, they have them too. But we typically find them in areas with old infrastructure. So areas, development from the 20s to 40s is typically where we see these cross connections. And I don't think it was malicious. I think it's just somebody made a mistake and, incorrectly tied a building sewer into a storm drain, and then it stays underground for miles, and then it pops out in the local waterway, and that's how we get raw sewage getting into our streams. So our office works, writes notices of violation and get those taken care of, but they can take time. But yeah, we also deal with breweries. The leachate that comes off of breweries, we don't want that going into our local waterways. We have several in the Little Miami watershed that we've had to work with to make sure that their best management practices, we're not allowing anything to get into our stream systems. And so when you make beer, you use grain, and that grain is sopping wet. And so if you throw it in a trailer, it's just going to ooze out the bottom of the trailer. And so we don't want to see it going into our streams. So, but we work with breweries on a regular basis over that. We also deal with concrete washout. So concrete trucks washing their, you have a $400,000 piece of equipment. You want to wash it out so that concrete doesn't dry in the truck, but you don't have a location to do it. And we see concrete drivers regularly washing out their trucks right into storm infrastructure, which is coming right into our local waterways. And so these ones can be tricky to enforce on because we show up after the fact. A homeowner calls and tells us it happened, but they didn't get a photo. We have no evidence that showed, it was, the homeowner might say it was a certain company, but we need some actual evidence before we can write a notice of violation and go after, an individual for something like this. So these ones can be really tricky. So we always tell people, take a photo if you can. It really does help us. So we also deal with restaurant grease. So really gross. I know almost all of these were in the Little Miami watershed, but dumpster grease and cooking greases should not be dumped on the ground. When they get dumped on the ground, they go into the storm drains and go to our creeks and streams, and it negatively impacts all of the local water bodies. And so we have a lot of authority over restaurants. And so, we work with them and say, hey, we talk to them and say, hey, you can't be doing this. But if your job is to empty out the grease bucket at the restaurant, you don't have that's not a really fun job to do. And so if the storm drain is 3 feet from the back door and the dumpster is another 20 yards, that's when we typically see problems like this. But once we talk to restaurant managers, they normally take care of it very quickly. So, okay, soaps and detergents. Yeah, we are across the board. Like, we will do enforcement on just about anything. Any illicit discharge of pollution getting into a waterway here in Hamilton County, we'll enforce on. Car washes are a big one. Detailing shops, things like that. The soaps and detergents can't be discharged into a local water stream. And so, especially if you're a business, We draw the line on if you're a homeowner. You are allowed, it's exempt. If you want to wash your car in your own driveway, on your own property, that's one thing. But if you're a business and you're making money on the process of washing vehicles, then your waste should not be going into a stream. So that's kind of where we draw the line on enforcement on that. But also hand washing stations and washing machines. We also see people's washing machines are in their basements, and their sump pump pits are also in their basements. And oftentimes their sump pump, they will run their line over to their sump pump pit that kicks it right out to the street or right out to the ditch in the backyard and right out into a stream. And so we often see soap suds coming out of sump pump lines, which shouldn't be happening. So if you see anything like that in Hamilton County, please refer it to our office. Yeah. So you take a picture. Pictures do help, but addresses also. We have to see it, to verify that it's actually happening. But yeah, I was told to keep it quick. We enforce on all sorts of illicit discharges. Septic and sewage is a big chunk of our job, but we also enforce on all the other ones too. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be sitting right there. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, last but not least is Reese. That rhymes, but yes. All right.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Want to give you a little overview of MSD's role and impact here in the Little Miami. This is for the whole area, and let's just talk about here in the Little Miami watershed. You've seen several maps of the watershed before, but to point out where our assets are and our large impacts are, first is the Polk Run wastewater treatment plant at the top of the map there. Discharges into an unnamed trib, but pretty much right into the Little Miami at River Mile 21.8. The Sycamore Creek treatment plant at River Mile 19 on the Little Miami. It actually goes into Sycamore Creek. We have several CSOs, lots of CSOs along Duck Creek in that area. Can we see that? My mouse going to show up? I just move it slowly, right? So Duck Creek and Little Duck Creek in this area, as you've already seen from some of the maps that have been shared already, highly urbanized, and that's an area where there's a tremendous amount of impervious area. It's a combined sewer area, and so we have combined sewer overflows. So that's an area where we have impact, as well as I put the Little Miami treatment plant just because it's named Little Miami, but it doesn't go into Little Miami. So yay, right? All of that area, and that's the largest plant in the watershed, and that discharges the Ohio River. But let's talk about some of what those impacts are. The Polk Run treatment plant average flow is about 5.5 million gallons per day, but has received the NACWA Peak Performance Awards, which recognizes excellence in permit compliance in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22. Only had one E. coli exceedance in the last 5 years. So yay, treatment plant's extremely well run, and we're very proud of that. Sycamore Creek similarly is very well run. We had no E. coli exceedances in the last 5 years. Highlighting that because truly that's where we can have an impact. Can unfortunately have an impact. We saw earlier that the biggest struggle in the Little Miami is on the recreational use, measured by E. coli. So trying to connect dots here. But again, that plant is highly well run. We saw the data on the tribs that tribs are in great shape. Next, in the place where we have, unfortunately, the largest impact from our urbanized area is the Duck Creek area. Like I said, it's highly impervious, highly urbanized. We are seeing that the CSO volume decrease in the upper right-hand corner of that graphic. You can see over the last 5 years the amount of CSO volume. We track that very closely. We have a whole team. In fact, part of Laura's teams tracks this on a daily basis, and we're making sure we're staying on top of this and slowing and decreasing it. We're seeing a great process. There's great progression there, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. But we have two significant operational projects being put in the Little Miami on two of the CSOs down there that I'll touch on. And then lastly, to highlight the Little Miami treatment plant, which I know doesn't go into the Little Miami, but it treats waste from the tremendous amount of the lower Little Miami. We have a whole slew of projects on deck, already in construction, and being planned out for the next 5 and 10 years. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested in the Little Miami treatment plant to upgrade its facilities. If you've driven by there recently, there's a huge construction right outside of the plant that's actually for standby and backup, an additional power that plant will need. And then eventually at the bottom of that list, you see there's a high rate treatment facility being planned to be designed at that facility. So MSD and our ratepayers are making a tremendous investment in the watershed at the lower end. What I'd like to do is share a little bit of our success stories with the CSOs, recognizing that's the place where we have the largest impact and the most visible impact. And if you've ever heard me speak before, I talk a lot about our smart sewer system, and I won't go into my hour-long presentation on that because Laura will kill me. But I wanted to highlight that in about 2013, and we had it online by 2015, was what we call our smart sewer system. And what it does is it takes hundreds and hundreds of sensors that we have out in the collection system, ties that with wet weather control facilities, whether they be gates as shown here, or treatment facilities shown in the lower right-hand corner, ties it all in together into a data platform, which we call SCADA, which is similar to the systems that they use to run treatment plants. Well, we have that for our collection system in all of our watersheds. This screenshot is from a part of the Mill Creek, but the point is the same. We have it also in the Little Miami area. And one of the things we found when we started deploying all these sensors and tying these systems together is we found incidents that are shown up here. Anybody translate this graphic for me? All right, so there's a little manhole here. We got a picture, pretty empty, but we have a CSO just upstream of it, overflowing. Should that happen? No! So now we're able to see this and take action in real time. So we're really excited about what this system allows us to do from an operational standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, and this is just an example, but this demonstrated it was happening. So when we saw this, and this example is showing where a sewer is not at full capacity, yet a CSO upstream is overflowing. It illustrated to us that there is a capacity constraint in there, which is the pipe going from the CSO to our interceptor, that is causing an overflow. And if we had control over that, we could stop that overflow from happening because we have space in that sewer. So we started thinking, how can we fix that? Well, we said, let's put some ducts out there. Right, we put some ducts in the watershed. Sorry, not that kind of duck. This kind of duck. So this is what we call a duct. It's a dynamic underflow control structure. And this is a cartoon of a typical CSO, right? Large pipe coming down from the watershed, collecting both combined and the sanitary sewage in one pipe. It has a pipe that then leads to the interceptor. Actually, you should go to this. This is a typical one where you have a little tiny pipe. And so when it's not raining, the flow just gets down to the interceptor. When it is raining, obviously it can't all fit into the pipe. So it overflows. So when it stops raining, it goes back to just going into the interceptor again. Well, a dynamic underflow control structure allows us to control this pipe. So we rip out the small one, we put in a larger one, and put a controllable gate. Because the technology exists now where we can control that remotely based on sensors downstream and upstream and other facilities. So these are what we call ducts. They're not cute and fuzzy, but they do lead to improved water quality. And we've got two going on in the Little Miami watershed in the lower basis. This is CSO 83, which is on Duck Creek. This is near, I forgot, it's a retirement home that's off to the left. Dupree, thank you. And so in this graphic, you can see there used to be a 54-inch line collecting combined and sanitary sewage from the entire watershed above it, having to squeeze into a little 8-inch line before it got to the interceptor that's 60 inches and goes down south to the treatment plant. And there's a large overflow pipe that goes into, this is Duck Creek. So what we've in the process of doing is coming in and putting in a 36-inch line to replace that 8-inch line, as well as putting a gate here at that combined overflow location so that we can control it in real time. So when it needs all 36, it can get all 36. When it doesn't need to do all that. It's under construction. It's actually nearing completion. This was this summer, and you can see the construction was well underway, or wrapping up in the next month or so. And then it'll look like this. It's all underground. It's all remotely controlled, but it allows us to have greater control over the sewers in real time. The other one is the other one is CSO 472, which is very close to, this is Beachmont. Arlo. Otto Armletter is upish, this way-ish. Yeah, close to it. Yeah, close to it. And it's like tucked behind, this is the police department's equine area. Anyway, this and Beachmont and the airport, the Lincoln Airport's down here to the left. Anyway, this is going to start construction next. These two were put together in a construction project, so they did 83 first, and now they're doing. They'll start next month on 472, and similarly put in what used to. I know this is a little bit busy, but the flow actually comes in this red line in an 84-inch combined sewer, and it goes through a little 12-inch underflow, and then it goes back down to the treatment plant in a 72-inch. And we're putting in a 36-inch underflow pipe so that this 84 can get more flow into this interceptor. This interceptor goes southwest straight to the plant. So we're excited about those, as both of them having greater capacity and real-time control, so we can have in real time active control of our sewers. The last one that I'll hit on, something that we're really excited about and just released earlier this summer, late this spring, early summer, was our public notification dashboard. And we put all these sensors out there, right? And a lot of them are at CSOs. And we tied that through the SCADA system I told you about, and then leveraged doing some really fancy IT stuff, but put it through a Power BI dashboard, which we now have on our public website. And so any of you and anybody in the public can go to our website and pull up this map that's shown here. Can I try this live? Dun, dun, dun. This link should take us straight to our website. Talks about our CSO notification program. And it's loading right now. This is a real-time show of our CSOs right now. So if you're interested in what's going on right now, this map will show. And if you're really excited, you can zoom in. You can see that actually CSO 425 is going off right now. That's not in this basin, but you can scroll over here and you can see that none of the CSOs are active in the Little Miami. This is something we're really excited about. It gets the information out in the public's hands in the way that they're used to seeing information now. And we encourage you to go to it and drive your friends and neighbors and everything. If they have, concerns about the water quality, look to this. Let's see if I can get back out. Because that's it. That's pretty much it. But now I can't get back to my slides because that was my last one. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So we've heard from 4 fantastic partners, and I guess 5 if you count Carrie. So we count Carrie. Yes. So now we're going to transition to the discussion portion of the evening. All right. So Reese, would you mind sharing what your table talked about? You have to use the microphone.
The first question was what surprised you or what interested you? Right? That was the first question. And I didn't plant this, but they were really impressed with the connection of the sensors in the sewers to the facilities to control the sewers. So allowed us to talk a little bit more about that. That was exciting. Love to talk more about that. The other was the surprise some of us, but not other of us, were the number of home septic systems in the watershed. Some people were like, oh yeah, we knew that. And others were like, oh my God, they're all over the place. So do you want me to do number 2 as well? Okay. So that does lead right into number 2. We saw the largest challenge was the failing septic systems or home septic treatment systems, HSTS. Home sewage, what? Home sewage treatment systems. Got that? Everything? Okay, got it. That's the home sewage treatment systems. Biggest challenge. Next, the other challenge was urban growth and the increase of runoff, how impervious surfaces are increasing, and then there's a lack of treatment for that runoff. And we kind of tried to tackle that question about partnership opportunities, and we got stuck because we're like, wow, there's all these different municipalities. We started talking about, okay, there's stormwater, and then there's, well, city of this, city of that, city of whom, and is that part of the problem? And so we didn't have an answer, but we thought there's got to be opportunities for partnership here. So those are what the great people that I got to talk with for those last 2 rounds. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any, I'm not going to go around to every table because we don't have time, but are there people who would like to share amongst the group? Does anyone in the room want to share what their table talked about other than Reese? Okay, Chris Hall.
We had conversations about things like Reese said, and then the development was always a concern, which is any way you can manage it, improve it, help it. Then there was a question about the high percentage of treated sewage in the river in dry weather. It's like 70-80% of the water is sewage that's been treated. And so we've moved a lot of water from, probably the Ohio River and other surface air impoundments and putting it into the stream. And we're curious if that would impact its scenic river status. And then other one was the need to reconnect the river to the floodplain if we really want to resolve that. If our treatment plants are doing their job, like it sounds like, then the real problem is, flooding and floodplain erosion, et cetera. And how is that solution going to come about?
I'm going to give the virtual folks a chance to either ask a question or share what they talked about since we were not part of the conversation. So is there someone online who wants to share?
Sure, I'll speak up for the virtual folks. So we started off by talking about some of the surprises, and we were surprised to hear about the mussels and
Lee,
how
we can't
they're.
hear you.
Oh,
just 1 second.
Sorry.
Okay, can you try
Okay.
now?
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Yes,
Okay,
got
great.
it.
So in the virtual world, we were surprised to hear about the mussels and the state of the mussels. We were also talked about low river levels, and there were a couple concerns about that. And people that had noticeable experiences with experiencing the lower water levels in the river. And then concerns about some businesses along the river using the water as kind of free water use. And do we need some stiffer kind of regulations or some water right rules that are more traditional in other parts of the country to kind of circumvent that? And then we talked about the E. coli concern. We're right here in the lower, you're talking mainly about the lower Little Miami, but it's also prevalent in the upper as well, because there's a lot of HSTS there as well. And then someone was surprised to hear about H2 Ohio and happy to hear about H2 Ohio. I know that more news will be coming out in the next couple of months when the governor does a press conference on that. But we were happy to hear about that. And then some of the challenges, we really talked about all the impervious cover and how impossible it sounds to reduce that or to go forward with a lesser percentage when we're developing. And so that was kind of a big concern and seemed like an impossible challenge. And then I know someone mentioned aqua saline, that product being used on roads. And we did hear that in Hamilton, they're not using that on the roads, but it's just a concern, hoping that they're not. And then someone mentioned the Army Corps and maybe a partnership with the Army Corps at Cedar Creek Lake with the dam. Could we, release at different rates, or could we release low flows to keep some more water in the river? Of course, there's a lot of reasons and rhymes and reasons why they release and don't release out of Cedar Creek, because it's mainly flood control, but just wondering about partnership there. And then we talked about some partnerships, citizen science, and then in connection with businesses that would really care about the river or have a business that's dependent on the river, like the liveries or even the breweries when they're dependent on the beautification along the river. Are there partnerships there that can be leaned into to help with these efforts? So that's all we talked about pretty much.
Great. Thank you, Molly, for sharing. I'm just going to open it up to the room. Are there any questions that folks would like to ask? I know it's getting late. We're almost out of time, so I'm okay with ending early. But I know there's a lot of great conversation, so I'm going to open it up one more time and see if anyone else has anything they would like to discuss regarding water quality in the lower Little Miami.
Jason, I've got a quick question for you. The conservancy easements that you talked about in your presentation, are you the holder of those conservancy easements?
We are. We do have some easements where we're co-holders. So we have some easements, like say with Tecumseh Land Trust up in the upper part of the watershed. It's agricultural land. But yeah, the majority of our easements, we actually, with Molly and Warren Soil and Water, we have some easements we hold with them as well. But the majority of ours, we have 34 conservation easements that we hold.
And if somebody violates one of your easements, who's your regulatory authority? Your enforcement authority, I should say.
Lawyers and courts,
okay,
and lots of money, and yes, so so there's funds that we pay into that helps protect us with that. But so the restrictions go on the deeds, and they run with the land deeds in perpetuity. So when someone, usually we have easements that are 40 years old, and so they've changed owners. And so what we do is we do annual monitoring, and we remind the owners that we have those restrictions, those deeds are on the land. So that way, if there is a new landowner, then we know that then they're aware of what the restrictions are. And then with the annual monitoring, we take photos and do a report that says, okay, you're meeting the restrictions, you're doing what you're supposed to. If there's a violation, then that's when it's not as pleasant. So, but luckily we have not had those. We've only had one violation in our, 56-year history, and that did involve a lawsuit.
So the Army Corps also requires conservancy easements for certain construction projects that they do when they impact a local waterway, but those are not currently getting filed with the land deeds, so nobody knows they exist.
Interesting.
And they're putting it on the permittee. It is the permittee's responsibility to submit that with the local recorder's office, which is just not happening.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm running across that quite a bit in Hamilton County. So just thought you'd find that interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Okay, there was one other hand up for the gentleman behind you here. Would you? Yeah.
I had a question about the mussel population. It is increasing in the Great Miami River, and is there any way to do that in the Little Miami River?
It's me, huh?
Yeah.
There are some healthy populations in the Great Miami River, but in general, mussels are declining pretty much everywhere, and it's not clear why. It's a matter of by what degree they're declining in various watersheds. I always hate to report so much bad news. I can tell you there's a real Goldilocks situation on the Little Miami where I reviewed a public project that ended up getting changed because a very healthy population of over 300 individuals was found. I think there were 14 or 15 species, 3 threat or 4 threatened and endangered species, and there were young in that population, which indicates it's reproducing. And when I explained that to the public agency that wanted to do the project that would have disrupted that colony, it was right in the crosshairs. Ironic. I mean, coincidentally, it was right in the wrong place. They came back after a month or so and said, "We've rethought this, and we don't want to do that. Conservation wins in this case. Do you remember the Art Deco bridge in one of Laura's slides? It was within sight of that bridge.
No, that's okay. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up this evening. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out, whether you attended virtually or in person. I think we had some great conversations around water quality and the Lower Little Miami. Hopefully, we identified some opportunities for partnership, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Hopefully, it doesn't stop here, but we continue to conversate and work towards improving and protecting the water quality of the Little Miami. So thank you all. Have a good evening.